Today we're going to react to the Japanese power metal rock group called the LOVEBITES. This is my favorite group among Asian rock bands. On this channel, since the beginning, about 3 or 4 months ago, I focused more on pop music, with one reaction to a rock band called the Rolling Quartz. But my intention was that once the channel gained more traction, I could bring other music styles beyond the pop, including rock and metal, all Asian. This channel will focus on analyzing Asian singers, but also other styles. For those who are new here, since this is a different theme, I might attract an audience that's different from the pop fans. So this channel focuses on vocal analysis, on the vocal technique of singers, preferably in live performances. Not studio recorded songs, but live performances. That's my focus. I'm a classical singer. I have over 20 years of experience in the field, doing active since 2020. Due to the major global problem we all faced. So now I'm in another professional field, but I worked over 20 years in this area. So that's my perspective on vocal technique. I have a training in classical technique, which is oriented toward romantic music in general from the 18th and 19th centuries. It's a very conservative school. And I bring here my personal interpretation and perspective on what I observe in contemporary techniques that singers generally use today. So it might differ somewhat from other professional views. Coach, singers, etc. There are always disagreements even among experts in contemporary vocal technique, speaking specifically about singing. There are always technical disagreements. Ultimately, we're all talking about the same thing, just with a different terminology and the other issues that we'll address during the reaction or in other videos. Here is LOVEBITES with the song Shadowmaker, which talks about someone going through a difficult life problem that are apparently affecting them psychologically. This person doesn't see much way out of their situation and is waiting for someone to come and rescue them, help them escape this difficult circumstance. So let's see what LOVEBITES Asami delivers technically and what I understand about her technique.
In the noise, it doesn't destroy. Jumping in someone's destroyed place. Still I go on, my head I just run. Hoping somebody grab my hand.
So, Asami, she doesn't have a technique that's strictly classical. It's more of a contemporary classical style, actually. So, secondly, experts in contemporary singing would consider this a mostly lyrical. Proper lyrical would be from vocalists like those from Nightwish, Tarja Turunen. Those who were in the same group, I can't remember now if it's Nightwish, I forget the names of the groups. But she has this technique that's slightly more oriented toward the lyrical. I really like her vocals when she is in the mid to low range. She maintains great stability with notes that are always well placed and projected. All the time, she uses the belt technique. Belting is a technique that gives the voice more brightness, projection, power, and aggressiveness. So, what happens when we sing is that even with a microphone, we need to place the resonance of sound, project the sound to specific areas, range from our chest to our head, and we can emphasize certain regions. So we have chest voice, head voice, mixed voice, which cover both chest and head regions. There are also more vocal, more nasal voices, higher placement in the forehead area, or even pulled back, which would be a covered voice placed higher up. Of course, when we sing, but singer can direct it to create different characteristics in the sound, which becomes very noticeable depending on which part of the song they're performing, even through the microphone. It actually enhances the music. There are many techniques, and here Asami has great mastery in using them. She uses vibrato in all her phrases. At the end of phrases, actually she uses it almost constantly in all her notes. She uses vibrato extensively. In the low range, despite being a soprano, a powerful soprano, she has excellent control and very secure technique. I really like her voice in the low and the mid ranges.
And it is too late. No one can tell me from all of the darkness that's so fragile. Like shadows on the night, I carry all the pain inside. Just before I'm alive, inspired go through this hell. Those days I had so, no matter if I told it not, wait, never be going down. With secret just for my heart.
If there were another contemporary singer who sang alongside her without the same technique, what would be quite noticeable is that Asami's voice is projected in a way that's slightly yawn-like. Not the very rounded type of yawn. It's a bit more open. The yawn is a bit more open, but as I just demonstrated, I think you notice the difference.
De eu falar assim ou de eu falar assim, muito bocejado, pouco bocejado ou normal.
These are directions where I emphasize the resonance of my singing, and specifically the voice projection where it resonates most. So she comes from Ryan B's school, original and currently she still sings songs by Ryan B, more pop oriented in parallel projects too, but she uses this technique that is slightly more lyrical compared to contemporary singing. What you notice most is that she has a voice much more projected upward from the forehead up, especially using, as I mentioned, the belting technique. The belt technique is in general. Just to comment, as a classical singer, I don't use these contemporary techniques, so many I don't really know how to execute. So I can describe to you what I perceive, what's being used, but many of them I simply don't use, and in fact, in classical music, in my musical school, almost all contemporary technique is considered a mistake. Besides, there are quite significant differences in terminology and even in placement. But in any case, I can describe many things to you, but she has this voice more projected upward all the time, both in low and high notes. And this is often a difficult for pop singers in general. Usually happy endings, those who can project well the notes from mid to high range, but in low range ends up losing much projection. Can't maintain an open belting throughout all melodic phrases. So the technique she uses is much richer, much more sustained, brings much more embellishment, technical richness, and security for the singer, especially when performing live. She also has diaphragmatic support, which is the foundation of all singing, regardless of school. Her support is simply impeccable, completely impeccable. The notes are always sustained.
Olha, nunca percebi uma falta de ar dela em performance ao vivo. Nunca. Nem por segundos, assim, aquele finalzinho de frase que acabou o ar. Isso não existe com ela.
So, no matter if I told her that I never could go and drown with tears just for my heart. That was the first, how long will we last? Chances of contact and matching the sky. Caught in the feet, a grip at the chin. Hoping some say I'll deal with her. Oh, in my agony, now it's the proof that I'm there. And all I want, even to feel like it's true life for me. I can sing it down.
So she always maintains uniformity even in larger octave jumps that she performs, even extremely high notes, because this song is predominantly in the low range. So the jumps she makes to high regions, she does with uniformity, is the same resonance you perceive down here and up here. This is a difficult for pop singers in general. The tone of the changes and usually sounds poorly executed. But she does it. She does everything with perfection. She always maintains the same placement. And this is exactly what in classical training, which is the technique I have, this is exactly what we aim for, uniformity. No matter what, the resonance placement can be in chest voice, head voice, or covered voice. There will always be this sound uniformity.
And all I want, even to feel like it's true life for me. I can sing it down. In shadow territory, my shadow like a happy soul. Breaks to go into the light. Tyranno, I say, but still I wish to live. Just waiting for a somebody. No, it's taking forever.
You cannot, she never makes she makes always with a yaw-like position. So always with that yaw position, so the sound is directed from the nose to the forehead, and she even projects into the cover, where the soft palate, she opens it, actually lifts it laterally, so the voice literally gushes over. Our voice has a vocal predominance. So here, our voice is predominantly here, depending on how. The person's natural open is when speaking or singing. It can be projected more into the nose, and Asami has this predominance of voice directed from the nose upwards, actually more centered.
Então seria do topo do nariz para cima e jorrando aqui por detrás.
Not all singers use the cover, so many singers lack projection. If we heard her without a microphone, we would hear a very powerful voice. She can sing without a microphone, with complete ease.
Just waiting for somebody. No, it's taking forever. Time to dip off the others.
So here, what a spectacle, what she's doing. Extremely technical. It requires a lot of diaphragmatic support. It's an air support technique we use. We have two lungs that inflate and expand. The diaphragm expands along with the lungs. It's the tissue that separates the digestive organs from our lungs, so it moves downward too. As you feel the lungs, it comes down. But you can control the diaphragm, lock in the place down here. And there are various techniques to lock it in place to gain more air or control the airflow from your lungs. She masters this perfectly. That's why she has such great quality when holds those long notes with slides. It's for transitioning from that low note. So she doesn't rise gradually, one note at a time. This is a slide, and then she does this technique of hold a very long note. I'm not sure how many seconds it lasts, I'd guess over 10 or 12. But you can notice the uniformity of volume, vocal quality, and how the note remains perfectly sustained without trembling or faltering, with the resonance remaining almost completely uniform across the entire range, both high and low. It's very characteristic of precisely who has a technique more oriented toward the lyrical singing. And she has wonderful high notes too. Sometimes she slips up in a show or two on those high notes from overusing them, like any metal singers does. So she also has that weakness of loving high notes too much, sometimes overusing them. Anyone who follows metal closely knows how difficult it is for many singers who don't lower the song's key. And after some years, when they are older, their voice can't hit those high notes anymore, then they end up struggling and give poor performances on stage. That's the reality. But she struggles with this a bit. Tug have noticed this more in the last year or two, that she sometimes has some difficulty with those extreme high notes, but these are occasional. Minor flaws you might not even notice, or sometimes just register placement, not necessarily being out of tune. But it's spectacular what she does here, and she has great control when making these big jumps and sustaining those high notes. And she definitely takes advantage of that. And the vibrato, she added it at the beginning of this accent in the lower register, She increases the vibrato as she does this slide. When she reaches the high note, she does a vibrato that's extremely regular. You can match her variation, because it cycles about 5 to 7 oscillations per second, both in volume and also in pitch oscillation of notes. There is a note oscillation where, for example, between C and D, you have C hash. So between C hash and C, when she does the vibrato, especially this one that has a very intense oscillation, this oscillation moves within this quarter tone. So it stays between C and C hash, so she keeps cycling here, C is here, C hash is here, she keeps doing this. Within this half, you have a volume oscillation combined with this pitch oscillation. And then you notice that she does this with great phases and regularity. This shows she has great control over using the register where she's placing the note now with great confidence, besides brief support, inflection, etc. Her entire technique is very refined. And here guitars, drums, bass. I can't comment specifically, that's not this channel focus. I have my opinions just as a fan, I can't analyze the band technically. But it's my favorite band in Japanese rock metal.
Out in the night, the church at the shore, champagne sun, the sword of blood. Stay, I go over, hang at the straw. Oh, and the time I throw my head. Searching my moonlight, so the lights that glow the last one. That it turns to one, no one to summon the soul. We can't fire like shadows overnight.
These notes then. These are the extremely high notes where she sometimes fails because they are notes that, out of 100% of the song, only 1% or 2% require hitting such extreme notes. For vocal health, these are dangerous notes. We know many rockers occasionally end up needing surgery, like Aerosmith's or Metallica's vocalists, Guns N' Roses. I think one of Angra's former vocalists also had to undergo surgery for vocal nodules. In classical music, there is also a lot going on in the middle of singing. People often stumble there, especially high-voice singers, tenors, sopranos, who love to play up there. But there is a note you have to be careful with. When she was younger, I noticed that she tended to hold these notes a bit longer. Nowadays she is more economical, out of prudence. But she executes it very well. It's a region where she has all her registers wide open, support at its maximum limit, with the diaphragm locked as strongly as possible, using open belt and full projection. Yet you cannot say certain, despite that uniformity I mentioned from low to high notes, You can notice that this higher note loses some of the characteristic. It becomes more. She opens it more because this voice is completely vertical. It's projected more openly in the palette. It's gushing more from up here, and she is using belting. So it has more brilliance and slightly more harmonics compared to what would be a slightly darkened voice from her normal projection, which is very interesting. She opens more in this one.
Like shadows overnight, I travel like the house is up. Whiskey going this way. I don't know what's there. That's the hours away. Just waiting for somebody. Knows me before I fall. Tattooed bits of the others. Like shadows overnight, I carry on the
You cannot see that. Every phrase she does. She makes a break. That's a yodel. It's slightly adapted here, but it's a yodel. Because this has. She goes from chest voice or mixed voice to falsetto in milliseconds and returns. Creating that sobbing, crying effect, which matches the song's lyrics about sadness and agony when someone faces life's problems and sees no way out. The screams, these jumps, to those high notes she makes, are like someone trying to break free from it all. So, there's a context where she fits certain vocal techniques to match precisely the theme of the song's lyrics.
Just before I'm alive, despite the fullness don't see my hands off. No matter if I down at high, they never before I drown. Let's take the just all I have.
Here at the end, she hit the high note but didn't go to that extreme. She held back, stayed midway. But with that intense vibrato of hers that's very characteristic. So, this is Asami, a singer with a technique that I compare her to Bruce Dickinson. For me, from the beginning, first time I heard LOVEBITES back in 2020, I listened to her and always identified with Bruce Dickinson. To me, she's Bruce Dickinson in a dress. Absolutely sensational, very technical, very consistent. She has great technique and vocalist who's really worth following. Top tier, for me, she is one of the top 4 or 5 female vocalists in the world. In my view, technically outstanding. So, if you enjoyed this reaction, leave your like and comment below, subscribe to see more videos like this, consider making a donation through the PayPal link below, or if available use Super Thanks button. See you next time.